Hi, so this is a quick video about intellectual property. It's not supposed to be a completely exhaustive recording, but the idea is to give businesses and people who are going into business, either self-employed or with a company, just a few quick thoughts about intellectual property when you're launching or expanding a business and why you need to be a little bit careful. So, what is intellectual property? Well, it's a collection of loads of different rights that all together are called intellectual property. So, as it is on the slide, you've got brands which are sort of registered and unregistered, trademarks, things that people use to identify their business, copyright, which you would have come across, patents, which are protection for ideas, designs. You can get protection for designs, either registered protection or unregistered protection. You might have some confidential information in your business, and you also might have some very useful databases like your client database. So why is intellectual property important? Why am I um, banging on about it? Well, statistics say that about 80% of a business's value is locked up in its IP. Effectively, if you ever want to sell your business on, what somebody wants to buy is they want to buy a business where it's not tied to the owner, where they can just take it over. If you think, sort of almost the ultimate version is like a McDonald's franchise. Apparently, you get this Bible, you get this book that tells you exactly what you need to do to run a McDonald's business, and you just do exactly what you're told, and hopefully and it should succeed. They've done it so long, it's so successful. You get all the brands, all the work, and they've got it all worked out. Within your business, hopefully you're going to have some assets, let's use that word, that are going to be worthwhile to somebody else to take on to improve their business or to be able to continue your business. So intellectual property formalizes what you own exclusively and also helps to establish what you can stop other people from doing because it might impinge on what you own. So again, looking back, we've got these different parts. So within any kind of business, you may well have a mixture of all of these things. If pretty much every business is going to have some brands, whether it's the brand of the person who started the business, their name, and perhaps something that's used their name as part of the title of the business. If they've come up with some brands for the products or for their services, all of those sort of things. And of course, you might have some logos, all kinds of bits. Copyright, if you're a creator, then obviously the things that you create, if you're a designer, the things that you create for your clients, they're all going to be creating copyright in different kinds of works, and that may be where the value of what you produce is. If you're a writer, then it'll be the copyright in the book that might be the real thing. And equally, if you're a trainer, there might be some copyright in your ideas, your books, all of the things that you produce, and that might be where the value is for you. If you're producing a new product that solves a problem, then it may well be that patent protection is what you'd want, or if it's a solution that somebody already knows, but you've made it look nicer, and your product is particularly appealing to the eye, then it might be that designs are what you want. Obviously, if you are producing things and you've done some work in the background, and if people found out, they'd know how to replicate what you've done. So you want to keep it secret, then confidential information is where it's at, and potentially the value of your business, which may not have some of those other parts, the brands, the copyright, the patents, the designs. It may not have a lot there, but it may well be that actually where the value of your business is in your connections, your clients. And actually, if somebody was going to buy your business, what they want most of all is access to your clients, and that's the database and perhaps the confidential information. So we've got a kind of collection of different bits, and which bits are most important to different kinds of businesses will vary from the sector, and equally based upon the way that you've run your business. So what's the risk, and why do you need to be aware of intellectual property? Well, when you're launching, or in fact at any point, you need to be careful that what you're doing isn't something that somebody else has rights over, because if you do, they may be able to bring an action in the courts to force you to stop. They may be able to claim some damages against your use, and obviously get some legal costs back as well. And obviously the outcome of that may be that either your business fails or folds because you can't afford what they're claiming from you, or perhaps you might not be able to grow your business in the way that you'd want. So you need to be aware when you're going into things of other people's intellectual property, and potentially about what you're going to do to protect your own. So when's the risk worst? Well, it's when you make a step. So at launch, if you adopt a new name, you need to be aware of what's out there. Sometimes when you go from local or regional, say you might not have actually registered any trademarks yourself, you might have been trading without any problems whatsoever locally or within a particular part of the country, and then you decide you're going to go national. You're going to franchise out, or you're just going to open some branches of your own in different parts of the UK. That might cause a problem. Sometimes, you might be, if you're based in the UK and then you decide now's the time to expand out into other countries like the US or Australia, say, you might get some problems then, because you may never have come across any issues in the UK, and you may not know of anyone in the UK who's a problem, but actually when you go into another country, you find out somebody's already got the rights out there. And then the last part is if you're expanding your offering. So if you take, for example, a business that's a restaurant, they may well have been trading really successfully as a restaurant for years. They then decide what we're going to do is we're going to do a deal with a supermarket to produce ready to eat or takeaway products, things that are chilled and that you can cook at home. And suddenly you find out that someone's got a conflicting right for food products in a supermarket, and it means they can't expand in that way. So those are key reasons why those are when the risks are at their worst. So what are the branding risks? I'm just going to talk about branding because that's the easiest one. Well, the first risk is that someone out there has got the same mark and their trademark registrations, because what we're going to all their unregistered rights cover exactly what you want to do, and that's the biggest risk because it's easiest for that other party to stop you if they've got a mark which is the same and it's doing exactly what you want to do. The next one is if they're not the same, they're just similar, and the level of similarity might vary, and people might be confused, or they say people might be confused. That's the next level of risk. Then we have marks that have a repute. So, for example, in the world of soft drinks, Red Bull and Coca-Cola and Monster and all those sort of people, they have a repute. And if somebody wanted to do something in another area, well, they could do a soft drink that's got a name that makes you think of one of those brands. But equally, if they wanted to do something in another area and the mark was similar enough that you might get a bit of a boost, or you might cause some detriment to like the Red Bull or the Coca-Cola, then they might be able to stop you. And a classic example from a case in the UK was that there was a high-end restaurant and they were able to stop somebody launching a dog food with a similar name because they said, oh no, you can't, it would damage the reputation in our high-end restaurant if somebody was to market a dog food with the same name. So you've got that. And then the last one is this passing off. So passing off is effectively what happens if you haven't got a registered trademark, or you're not relying upon a registered trademark, but you say, my business has built up all this goodwill, and if you use a name that's too similar, people are going to be misled into thinking you're connected or endorsed or in some way connected or licensed to us with this long-term business. So that's the final risk, or the final main risk with branding. So what do you do about that? Well, if you're either looking to launch, to move into a new country, or to expand what you want to do, the first bit is to do identical searches. So you're looking for the identical mark that you want to pick up, you want to use, and you want to look for things that are identical to the products or services that you want to do. That's the key one, and that's and we'll come on to talk about how you can do that yourself and whether you need help. The next one is, so if you've established there isn't anything out there which is the same in terms of, they don't do the same thing and they're not the same brand, then you might cover off what's called full availability search, and that's to work out whether there might be something that's just similar that might be a problem. For this passing off risk, where someone's built up a business, you might do searches on Google or other search engines to identify if there's people out there that are using similar names. And then the repute one, the Red Bull, Coca-Cola sort of situation, you might do a search for the same mark without any reference to particular products or services, and then have a look around and see whether the people who own rights in those names might have been trading long enough that it could be said that they've built up a reputation. So it's slightly complex, and that's why I say what I say about identical searches. So when you do it, if you're looking at a number of countries, you're going to need to probably do it on a country by country basis, because trademarks are most of the time are registered country by country. So if you want to operate in the UK and someone's got registrations in the US, that probably that's unlikely to cause you a problem unless you want to do the US in the future. In the UK, there is something called the UK Intellectual Property Office, and you can have a look on their website. You can do a search on their website for brands, for marks. There's a couple of other places you can look for other countries. TMView and this WIPO brand database let you look at lots of different countries at the same time. So they're quite good if you're looking at potentially expanding into other countries. You need to look at the main area of interest to you, but also adjoining sectors. So we said that example slightly earlier about the restaurant that's then going to move into selling things in the supermarket. If you've got plans that you might want to expand in the future from your first product into something else, then you might want to do those searches for everything now, because you don't want to get to the stage in 5 years' time where you think, look, as a restaurant, ideally would be a restaurant for X number of years, but then we'd earn loads of money off the back of it by doing a deal with a supermarket to do a branded food product sold in the supermarkets so that we don't have to produce everything ourselves or what have you. If it turns out that you can't do that, that might have actually caused, it might cause you to change the brand you'd want in the first place, because it's not really going to work if you launch your restaurant with one name and then you have to go with a completely different name for the product in the supermarkets. So you need to have a look at these different areas, and there is a product called TM Class, which is a way that you can search to find out what classes what you want to do fall into. When you do these searches, you have to tick what classes you want to look at, and different things fall into different classes. When you register a trademark, you have to pick the classes and do a list of what you want to cover. So when you're searching the idea is that when you're searching, you can just look for brands in particular classes, and that will help you to find earlier problems quicker. So if you can use TM Class to try and work out what classes you need to look at. But as I say at the bottom, it only picks up people who've either applied for trademarks or have registered trademarks. It doesn't tell you about trademarks that are in use, so that people have built up businesses under particular brands but never got round to actually registering their trademarks, and they can be a risk too under that passing off point that I mentioned. So remember that these identical searches are just the beginning. So if the identical searches show clear, then you might want to do further searches, those availability searches that I talked about. Assessing them is not going to be easy without experience. I appreciate that using lawyers can be expensive, but if you pick the right one, they're going to have experience of doing this all of the time and will have good judgment and know how to get around things. You need to be aware that when you do these searches yourself, if you're doing them yourself, it is only a snapshot. So things can change. If you look on today at the register, you think, great, that's fine, I can go ahead with my business, and you start doing it, and you don't protect your trademark there and then for what you want, you could find out that in the future somebody has registered a trademark that either stops you doing the key thing that you're doing now, or alternatively that stops you doing something in your expansion plans. So be aware that, you know, really what you want to be doing is making sure that nobody else has got intellectual property, particularly trademarks, over what you want to do. And if they don't, then you want to be protecting yourself to make sure that somebody can't file something after you've launched that then is a problem for you. And more broadly, if you are thinking about your business and your intellectual property generally, a free thing that you can do is you can use the UK Intellectual Property Office's website. There's something called an IP health check. I've put the link in there. That will help guide you through certain questions, will help you to identify things that you might need to do. But alternatively, I would say, seek some proper advice about where your intellectual property might lie in your business, where the risks come from, and it'll help you to identify, well, lots of things. Number one is where the risks are. Number two is where the value is. Number three, how you can best leverage that value and avoid the risks. So hopefully that's been helpful. My name's Aaron Wood. I'm a trademark attorney, and you can, if you look me up, you can find me at one of the consultancies that I work with. But otherwise, I hope that you will use this to go off and do some searching yourself if you need to, or it'll help you to try and find a specialist intellectual property lawyer to solve any problems you might have. Thanks.